Well, good morning, everyone. It is 8:30 on the dot, and we're going to go ahead and get started this morning. It's a little unusual. I'm used to being in front of an auditorium full of new teachers, so this is a little bit different for us this morning. But I can feel your energy coming through the Zoom lens. I really can. My name is Shelley Labios, and I'm one of the specialists in the Office of Professional Growth and Innovation. We at PGI, on behalf of Virginia Beach City Public Schools, welcome you. Teacher Orientation 2020 has actually been underway since July and will continue throughout this week. As of today, almost 350 teachers have joined the division from across Hampton Roads, around the state, throughout the country, and even as far away as Honduras, Italy, and Turkey. Roughly 1/3 of you are new to the education profession, including at least a dozen career switchers. 60% of you will work with elementary students, and 1/4 of you are special education teachers serving grades pre-K through 12. All grade levels and content areas are represented here at orientation, as well as instructional positions that serve multiple student populations. Examples would include school counselors, speech-language pathologists, and literacy specialists, to name a few. I've had the pleasure of meeting more than 200 of you online during our learning environment sessions. Which reminds me, if you haven't already done so, please complete your 2-division essential sessions this afternoon. Information about learning environment and get to know Schoology was in your welcome email, and your lead mentor can also provide you with the learning environment Zoom link and the Schoology join code. So we are thrilled that you have chosen to become part of the Virginia Beach family. We look forward to working with you throughout the year to meet the needs of every student every day. Speaking of students, we have Pearl Renwick from Bayside High School this morning with us to have a few words of inspiration.
Good morning. My name is Pearl Renwick, and I'm a senior at Bayside High School. And over the past 12 years, I've learned many things in a classroom, from writing my name and counting to analyzing literature and performing stoichiometry. The amount of ways my brain has grown have amazed me. But you see, the most important things I've learned in a classroom stretch far beyond academia. Countless life lessons and the elements to being a good human have been instilled in me during the school day by various educators. I can proudly say I am who I am today because my teachers have seen me, challenged me, encouraged me, and believed in me. In times of uncertainty, they have looked at me and my peers and assured us that though the world may seem bleak and the obstacles may seem unconquerable, we are strong, we are smart, and that we are capable of changing any situation as long as we remain determined. Teachers are an unwavering beacon of hope, and that has never been needed more. This school year looks very different than ones before it. And despite the fact that we are not together in person, I believe that you as educators wield the power to unite us through learning. This is a chance for you to innovate in the way you present information, challenge yourself in the way you perceive communication, and most importantly, take the time to be someone that inspires your students. As you take on this school year, please remember that no one can pour from an empty cup. You must find ways to energize yourself so that the excitement and enthusiasm you feel in life translates back to your classroom. You are all amazing and highly capable, and though the school year may look different, one thing remains the same, and that is that teachers are superheroes. You guys have got this. Welcome back. Please enjoy your new school year.
Thank you so much, Pearl, for being with us this morning and reminding us exactly why each one of us is here. Next, please welcome Kelly Walker, President of the Virginia Beach Education Association.
Hi, good morning, and welcome to Virginia Beach City Public Schools. My name is Kelly Walker, and I currently serve as the President of the Virginia Beach Education Association. I am honored to be here and would like to share information on why it's important to join your professional education association. The VBA, which was founded in 1938, is a local affiliate of the Virginia Education Association and the National Education Association. When you join today, you become part of the largest organization in the country that advocates for public education. Public education is the cornerstone of our democracy, and the VBA values you and what you do to support students every day in the classroom. This is why the association continually advocates for higher pay and strong compensation packages for teachers, as well as fully funding our schools so you have the resources you need to do your job. We are passionate, we are dedicated to our profession, and understand that we constantly advocate for what we do. We will never give up until we are paid what we are worth and have the funding from the state and the national level to fully support our school division. Needless to say, COVID-19 has brought many challenges to our profession, but know that the VBA works hard every day to ensure that all staff and students are protected, both in the virtual and face-to-face learning environment. I joined the VBA when I started teaching almost 3 decades ago. It seems like a long time ago. I became a teacher because I wanted to make a difference in the lives of my students. I was a swim coach, I sponsored Model UN, I attended football games and proms, and traveled the world with students with the Global Studies Academy. But teaching was more than just a job to me, it was my calling, which is why I was active in my professional association. I am a professional. It only makes sense to join my professional association. The association also taught me to be a leader and to speak up when necessary. The association gave me the opportunity to do important work that impacted not just the students in my class, but every student in the city, the state, and even the country. Implementing full-day kindergarten at Virginia Beach is one example of where the VBA played an integral part. Just a few years ago, Virginia Beach was one of only 3 school districts in the state that did not offer full-day kindergarten for its students. The VBA was able to bring stakeholders from City Council and the school board together in order to find the funding needed for full implementation. Full-day kindergarten is crucial to the success of the school division as it positively impacts both students, educators, and the families we serve. Joining the association is really easy. Take a few seconds right now and go to vba.org/join. Complete the membership form, and once you hit send, you're enrolled. Membership dues are taken from VBCPS payroll deduction through employee self-serve, and a form from VBCPS payroll will be sent to you later today with information on how to sign up easily. Dues are deducted automatically for only 10 months, and we have made a special page for you as well for teacher orientation that will be sent. The link will be sent in an email with you as well. Membership offers a plethora of benefits. We offer a $1 million legal liability insurance plan in case you are sued, support and guidance from our professionally paid staff, free quality professional development, discounted legal resources, supplemental insurance, college debt relief programs, and much more. But most importantly, the VBA is your voice on important issues that affect you every day in the classroom. As you know, educators across the country are joining together in order to show our elected officials that funding for education must increase. Due to years of insufficient funding, our school buildings need repair. Additional support is required in our classroom to help those students who are suffering from trauma. And we need to support and prepare our students for the complicated and changing workforce of the 21st century. We also join together to ensure that public school employees receive fair and just compensation. Several of our members who are now elected officials actively advocate for fully funding public education on your behalf. Now more than ever, it is imperative we stick together and join our fellow educators to advocate for fully funding public education. Membership in the VBA provides you with security and peace of mind. I hope you have a wonderful school year, and I look forward to working with all of you and look forward to my email this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kelly. Links to vbea.org and instructions for joining can be found on the homepage of your teacher orientation website. A link to that website is in your welcome email, and it will also be in the weekly teacher orientation newsletter that is coming later this week. And now we'll hear from School Board Chair Carolyn Rye. Mrs. Rye?
Thank you, and good morning to all. So I am Carolyn Rye, and I'm serving my sixth year in elected office and first year as chair of our 11-member school board. What an honor it is to officially welcome you on behalf of all my colleagues to Virginia Beach City Public Schools. A quick school board snapshot. 3 of our present board members are retired career teachers. 3 more share different degrees of classroom experience, and the remaining 5 represent a healthy mix of other occupations. We're fortunate to work in concert with a widely respected former state superintendent of the year who is a true visionary. Our collective vision remains our collective mission remains to support all of you in your efforts to educate our students. Most immediately, that applies whether you will continue virtual instruction for the full semester or are a candidate for a sooner face-to-face return if and when circumstances allow. I'm the proud daughter of 2 career high school teachers with a personal combined background in education and business. My husband and I relocated to Virginia Beach with our 2 school-aged children in 1998. Many of you have recently relocated here yourselves from outside this region of Southampton Roads or are in the process of doing so. Others of you have stayed true to your local roots. Quite a number of you are first-year teachers. Others have transferred from other districts or are returning to the profession after an extended leave. We all stand to gain as you share your unique geographic and personal school history backgrounds with one another and our students. The racial, ethnic, religious, and cultural diversity you bring stand to enrich all of us the more, and are as valued as your particular teaching credentials. So with that, I'm going to end with a short list. Seasoned teachers were asked what one thing they wish they had known when they were first-year teachers. And understanding that not all of you are first year, hopefully even you will latch on to something here. So here we go. Embrace student choice. Relationships matter. Don't go it alone. Surround yourself with positive people. Learn from other teachers. Work smarter, not harder. Remember, words are powerful. Be yourself. Relax and smile. You don't need to know all the answers. It's okay to make mistakes. Your students won't always share with you. That's okay. But when they do, it will be wonderful. You don't have to teach everything or grade everything. It's okay to cry. And finally, it's always worth it. So again, welcome, make the most of this week, and look forward to meeting many of you in the months to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rye. And now we are fortunate to have with us this morning our superintendent, Dr. Spence. Dr. Spence.
Thank you, and good morning to all of you, and especially my thanks this morning to Mrs. Walker, to Chairwoman Rye, and especially to Pearl, who's just an amazing student, who's been a member of my superintendent advisory, and we're just so pleased to hear your encouragement this morning, Pearl, and noting for us how teachers have impacted your life. I am, as noted, Aaron Spence. I'm the superintendent of schools here in Virginia Beach City Public Schools, and I'm really excited to be with all of you here this morning as we prepare for your first incredible year with Virginia Beach City Public Schools. We want to start by making sure you know that we are thrilled to have you join our team this year, which is, as you know, shaping up to be a year not quite like any other school year in the history of public education, but a year in which we continue to plan for an educational environment that is engaging for our students and that keeps them, their families, and you safe while we do so. We know things seem a little bit uncertain these days, but I can assure you that you have joined the best school division in the world. And although I may be a bit biased, I want you to know that we are nationally recognized for our leadership in curriculum and instruction and assessment. We are nationally recognized for our leadership in school facilities and sustainable practices in so many things and in so many areas. And we have so much to be grateful for. We have more schools in Virginia Beach recognized with the VDOE Highest Achievement Award than any school division in the Commonwealth of Virginia, for example. We have the highest on-time graduation rate that we've ever had, the lowest dropout rate that we've ever had. We have incredible scores on national tests. We have more students taking more rigorous coursework than ever before here in Virginia Beach and doing better than ever before. And we're just so proud of everything that the people who work in our school division accomplish on behalf of the children, our families, and our community here in Virginia Beach. And As we think about graduation, of course, graduation looked a little bit different for us this year, as did so many other things in our school division. And that was, of course, thanks to this pandemic with COVID-19. If you are not in Virginia or not from Virginia, you may not know, but our schools were shut down by our governor on March the 23rd. And what I would say about that, as all that occurred, was that we adapted relatively quickly, as we say, building the plane as we were flying, but often doing so without a blueprint. And what I can say is that we know this health crisis has presented some serious challenges for us to tackle as a school division and continue to face as we enter this new school year. And we know that these challenges will likely include more instructional time away from the brick and mortar classrooms that we're all used to. And I know that that can add some anxiety to what is an already anxious world for so many of us. But I also want to note that it has opened up some opportunities for us. In a relatively brief amount of time last year, our educators discovered that they are really pretty good at teaching from afar, provided that the supports are there. And by supports, I'm talking about the technology infrastructure that allows our teachers and our students to stay connected to one another and to their instructional materials. And I could say that our teachers have been creative and flexible and adaptable to technologies that they may otherwise have never even tried to incorporate into their instructional days. But if there's something that really shown to us during this time, it was that the relationships between our teachers and our students are incredibly important. And I think our teachers embraced and understood that. So we have a lot to be proud of here, but let me be clear, we are only just beginning. In Virginia Beach, we're not concerned just with where we are today and in this moment, but we're keeping our eyes on how far our students can reach. And we know that that's going to look a lot different tomorrow than it does today, and certainly than it has in years past. So what do I mean by that? I'm not just talking about Zoom meetings or face coverings. As hard as it is to believe, we don't see kids in school who were born in the 20th century. And in fact, I'd wager that many of you who are joining us as new teachers do not remember what life was like before the year 2000. So think about that. Some of you, and certainly none of your students, have any idea what it's like to get on an airplane without being screened. These students that we're talking about were born into a post 9/11 world. And in fact, many of our seniors will have been born in the year 2002. So what was happening that year? Well, the most popular Christmas gifts in the year 2002 were Beyblades. These were battle spinning tops from Hasbro. And the company sold 150 million of these Beyblades, earning something like 500 million in sales in 2002. The most popular movies in 2002 were The Lord of the Rings, The Two Tower, and the second in the installment of the Harry Potter movies, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Nickelback was topping the music charts. Of all things, Mel Gibson was the top grossing actor. Tina Fey and Jimmy Fallon were still on Saturday Night Live, and it cost 37 cents to mail a letter. And the reality is that many of our students today might not even know what that means to mail a letter, because many of them have never physically done so. In fact, 2002 was the second year that the very first iPod and the Xbox were available for sale. And interestingly, in 2002, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube did not yet exist. So think about how much has changed culturally in the time since today's seniors were born and we enter this school year. And think about how much has changed professionally in terms of our expectations between now and then in terms of thinking about learning and the workforce. So let's take a look back at what was happening in education years ago. Take, for instance, the 1950s. Back then, all you needed to successfully complete your schooling were basic reading and writing skills and the ability to calculate. And when you talked about school culture, compliance was incredibly important, and creativity was discouraged, at least broadly, because we were really focused on industrial processing and processes that required precision and repetition. Creativity, in fact, was thought to be only in the domain of the arts, and it didn't have a place in the day-to-day world. And developing leadership skills was only for those who were likely to go on and manage businesses or become professionals, a select few in a system that was designed to sort and select out students so that only the very few would go on to higher learning. So as evidence of that kind of culture, does anyone know what the high school graduation rate was in the 1940s? If you can imagine this, in the 1940s, the graduation rate was 25%. Only 1 in 4 students in America had a high school diploma in 1940, and the college going rate was 20%, so 20%. And by the way, just to put that in context, in 1940, only 40% of Americans reported ever going to high school. So 40% of Americans went to high school, and of that 40%, only 25% of those students ever graduated, and of those 25%, only 20% of those students went on to college. So what's that like today? Well, today, nearly 100% of our students go to high school. And the national graduation rate is well over 80%, and the college going rate is well over 40%. So what does that mean for us? Well, that means that today we've had to move far beyond the basics because our workforce requires it. Although reading and calculation are still fundamental, reading critically, or being able to analyze and synthesize and create new learning from our reading, and number sense, or how numbers work and help us make sense of the world around us, are now supremely important in the workplace. And more than that, and importantly, mere compliance is now frowned upon in the workplace. Leadership is distributed, and the ability to identify problems and solve those problems is expected to happen at the highest levels of management and also at the point where the problem exists. So creativity is admired and it's expected, and the ability to collaborate with others to generate new learning or solutions to problems and share that learning with others is paramount. So those are really large paradigm shifts in a relatively short amount of time. Now you might be sitting there thinking about that and going, wow, I thought teaching my kids how to do long division and how to make sure that they can do their multiplication tables was going to be tricky, but now I have to make sure that they're doing all of that while they're being as creative as artists and as assertive as the titans of industry. And oh yeah, we want them to be collaborating with each other at the same time too. And the answer is yes. And you have to make sure that you're doing that for all students, not just some of them, because the expectation now isn't sorting and selecting, but that every single child that comes through our doors has an outstanding educational experience and finds success. And what I need you to know is that this work is not another thing that we have to do. This is an automatic byproduct of everything that we already do in our classrooms here in Virginia Beach City Public Schools. I've seen it time and time again. When we do our work well, with focus and intent, we change lives for our students and prepare them for the world they're entering. Helping children reach towards those ceilings and become their better selves and realize their full potential is important work, and it's hard work, but we know it can be done. So what's our secret here in Virginia Beach? Well, the answer, quite simply, is you. And that is why there is no greater calling than that of being a teacher. You are a force for good in this world, helping students learn not only what they need to be successful in this day and age, but what they need to be thriving citizens in our society. You see, as a superintendent of schools, I have a very specific theory of action for improving schools and for making VBCPS the premier school division in this country. It's my belief that if we have 3 things, that we will be incredibly successful in making a difference in the lives of every child every single day and improving our community. First, we need to have effective leadership in every single building. Second, we need to have an effective teacher in every classroom, whether that's virtual or face-to-face. And third, we need to have equity of opportunity and access for every child in our school division. And I can tell you that this idea of equity is a major focus of our school division. And as you see, conversations about equity are not just conversations about poverty or broken home or disadvantages. Conversations about equity are conversations about access and excellence. It's about how we identify best practices and the best resources and the best people to intervene and make a difference in a child's life and better set them on their path for success. And let me tell you, this is such an important topic right here and right now. For me personally, I think we are in really challenging times. In education and in our culture as a whole, these are very difficult times for us and also for our students. I turn on my television, I get on my Twitter feed, I read the newspaper, and sometimes, and maybe you're like me, I feel overwhelmed by what I'm seeing. I am deeply and I am terribly hurting for our children because they are growing up in an environment of chaos and concentrated hatred. And I don't understand how we've come so far in so many ways as a nation, but in so many ways we're experiencing setbacks socially and culturally. And so I have to know and I have to believe that our greatest challenge in education is overcoming this type of social and cultural chaos, this kind of social and cultural ignorance through education, because I believe that people hate what they do not understand. And so the question for us as educators is this: how are we going to lead our culture, to lead our community, to lead our society in raising children that know and understand and appreciate the beauty of diversity, of respect, and of collaboration? And I wonder, in education, how well are we able to rise to this challenge? Well, if I take a look around at what society says about us, then I'd say we're missing the mark. We see that we are missing large groups of children in our classrooms. We are allowing the suffocating restraints of standardized testing to determine our vision for our students. We're missing, in so many ways, the bigger picture. And whether or not that is our reality, or whether or not that is simply the public perception, what we do know is that here in Virginia Beach City Public Schools, we must work every day to be better at what we do. We have to create schools and classrooms that are for everyone, that are for all children. We need to build deep relationships with our students. We need to cherish the opportunities that we have been given to be a part of their lives. And we need to ensure that every child has an exceptional learning experience every single day in Virginia Beach, regardless of zip code or how much money their parents have in their pocket or the color of their skin. There are no lost causes in the city of Virginia Beach. And I want you as new teachers to Virginia Beach City Public Schools to remember that. There are no lost causes, no children who are too poor, too unloved, or too difficult to succeed. Time and time again, we see that when you give the right support and the right access to any child, he or she can and will succeed. There are too many stories to prove that true to forget that reality. And I know that sounds like a really nice and an idealistic thing to say, but it is not just an idea or theory. It is the absolute truth. So I want to show you a slide. What you see here is the map of our city. And those reddish hued zones that you see right there are the concentration of students receiving free or reduced lunch in our city. So concentrated zones of poverty. The darker the color red, the higher the concentration of students receiving those free meals. And in the darkest red areas, there are more than 1,200 students per square mile receiving a free meal at school. You can also see on there green and yellow and orange circles. And those represent the 16 schools, elementary, middle, and high, which in 2014, when I arrived in Virginia Beach, were accredited with warning, meaning they were not fully accredited. That was 6 years ago. And if you can see that map, I took that map and I walked around this community and I said, is this the kind of school division we want to be? A school division that clearly tells us if you're a child living in poverty, your school will not be as good as schools for children who live in affluence. And to be the greatest school division in the country, this cannot stand. And so with our emphasis on equity, we began deeply examining with our building and our teacher leaders the needs of every school and of every child. And we've created processes through our professional learning communities and our school improvement work. And more importantly, we're building a culture where we put children first in Virginia Beach, where we seek to understand their strengths and their challenges, and where we spend our time and our energy leveraging the former to address the latter. In other words, based on what we're seeing and on what we're hearing, we have been able to provide the targeted supports and resources that our families, our students, and our staff need in order to be successful and to address these challenges. And we've gotten really good at this, and we demand excellence from one another, and that's the school division you've joined. So now if you were to update this map, you will see that every single school in Virginia Beach is fully accredited. And here's the thing, I've told you that you're part of a winning team, and I'm really proud to share with you that you've joined a school division where all of our schools are fully accredited now for 4 consecutive years. Now this works on the school level because of the work and the relationships that you, our teachers, are building every single day in our classrooms. True equity begins with digging beyond the surface level with your students, with knowing what's going on in their world, with knowing what they go home to, how they come to school. That story is so vital to your work in the classroom, because you see, teaching in Virginia Beach isn't about making sure 67,000 students are successful. Teaching in Virginia Beach is about making sure one student is successful 67,000 times a day. Take a moment for me and just read this poem by Joshua Dickerson. Now, as you do this work with us, if nothing else, I hope that this poem will be just another powerful reminder that the missing pencil or the missing assignment or even the ringing cell phone maybe shouldn't be the deal breaker for our children. Sometimes we don't have the slightest clue just how amazing it is that a student shows up each day. You know, when I was a first-year teacher, I have to say that I was pretty clueless when it came to one of my students, and I'd like to share that story with you, and it's a story that I've shared with every new teacher to come to Virginia Beach since I've been here. Now, I was a French teacher, and it's hard to believe it, but it was over a quarter of a century ago now. And like all new teachers, I was incredibly excited and enthusiastic and knew I was going to change the world, and I loved teaching French. I had lived in Paris in college, and I just adored all things French, and I thought everybody needed to know and ought to want to learn French. And so I was excited, and I had classes of students and was having a great time. And I had this one student, and his name was Curtis. And Curtis didn't want to take French, and he let me know that. In fact, on the very first day of school, he said to me, "I don't want to be in this class. I'm only in here because the counselors couldn't fit me into Spanish." And, you know, I, like most new teachers, said to myself, well, that's not going to stand. I'm going to make sure, Curtis, that you want to learn French. And so I spent a lot of my time with Curtis, making sure that I would call on him and double check that he was doing his homework. And, you know, Curtis would argue with me and get upset when I called with him. And unfortunately, I would engage with him in that, and I would get upset with him, and I would argue back with him. And it got to be pretty bad. in that class. In fact, some of you who've been teaching before would recognize this. I would, before a class, I would start to get this pit in my stomach about going to that class, because I knew that there was just going to be some moment of confrontation, some kind of disruption that was going to happen because this young man was in my class. And I started to think about it, and those of you who've taught before will recognize this as that class. It's everybody sometimes seems to feel they have that class that, for whatever reason, it's just the class that is not as much fun to go to and to teach as any other class. And so I would go to that class, and things weren't improving, and then thankfully, this happened early in my career. I had this kind of moment of reflection where I said to myself, if I'm feeling this miserable before I go to that class, I wonder how he's feeling. I wonder how the other students in that class are feeling. And so I decided that something had to change, that something had to give, that rather than, attempting to make sure that Curtis could learn French and wanted to learn French, that I needed to try a new approach. And so I did something, and I'm certainly not going to recommend that you try this. This is not a pedagogical approach that I would recommend, but I needed to try something. And so I went into that classroom and I said to this young man, Curtis, I'm not going to call on you anymore. And in fact, I don't even need you to do your homework anymore. But what I need you to do is I need you to stay after school with me a couple of days a week. And I'm going to try to help you a little bit, but I just need to get to know a little bit more about you. And, Curtis, being a smart kid who didn't want to get called on or do his homework, agreed to do that with me. He began meeting with me after school. And at first we did a little bit of checking about some of the work of the day, but as we met more often after school, I began to know more about Curtis. And I learned things about Curtis and who he was and where he came from that were very different than the world that I came from. So I grew up here in Virginia Beach. I grew up in a Navy family. I grew up with supportive parents. And although we had our own challenges growing up, I came to understand that Curtis came from a world I didn't know. He was the son of a Marine who had been discharged and had left his family due to alcoholism. His mother was raising him alone. They were living in the one trailer park in the county in which I work, which was not a good environment. His mother was rarely home because she was working. And so Curtis from day to day didn't know whether or not he was going to have a meal. And as all of that was happening, what I was realizing was, Curtis was doing a lot just to get to school. And I understood why French maybe wasn't at the top of his list. And so I began to do things like just check in on him on a day-to-day basis to see how he was doing and what support he might need from me outside of the classroom. And, there were some days where I just had to go and make sure with the cafeteria that he could have something to eat, even if he didn't have the money for that. And so over time, he and I got to know each other pretty well. And then something sort of interesting happened. One day in class I was teaching, and Curtis's hand went up. And of course I was thinking, oh no, what's going to happen here? But I called on him, and much to my surprise, he answered the question that I had asked. And you could have seen my jaw drop and hit the floor. But I smiled and moved on. And then after class, I said, Curtis, stay with me for a second. And he did. And I said, Curtis, you answered that question. I think that might be the first time you've answered a question in class this year. And at this point, this was probably halfway through the year. And he said, yeah, I know, Mr. Spence. He said, but listen, you're the first adult male who's ever cared about me in my life, and I just don't want to let you down. And that moment changed the way I viewed teaching forever. Because what I remembered what I learned in that moment, and what I've remembered ever since, is that it isn't what you're teaching that matters. Certainly what we teach is important, but what matters most is the relationship that we build with young people. The fact that we show them that we care, the fact that we show them that we're there for them and will help them to do anything that they need to do in order to be successful, will make a transformative difference in their lives and make them want to learn with us. And what I learned is that children bring so much baggage to our schools. and so many challenges and barriers to their success, in that it's our job. It's our job to break down those barriers. And I'll tell you, the story doesn't end just there. There's one other interesting part to that story, and that's that I remember not long thereafter, I went into the teacher's lounge, and we don't have teachers' lounges anymore. We call them teacher workrooms, and that's a good thing, I can assure you. When when I was a younger teacher working in teachers' lounge, there were a group of teachers who used to live in there. We called them the lounge lizards, because they would just sit in that lounge and they would just talk about children in such negative ways. And I remember one of them who I did admire as a teacher. She was a veteran teacher, but she was talking about Curtis. And she was an English teacher, and she said, you know, this young man, this was just when SOLs were beginning, and she was complaining about SOLs and about whether or not she could get a child like Curtis to be successful. And she said, you know, I can't even get him to write his name at the top of the paper, much less write a paragraph. He'll never pass this new test. And I looked at her, and I put my hands on the table, and I said, he's writing essays for me in French. I think you could do it. And I stood up and I left that room. And I remember thinking to myself, we all have an obligation to make sure that we're giving Curtis everything, every chance to be successful by getting to know who he is and building a relationship with him. So how do we all do that? How do we break down those barriers for our students? How do we meet our kids where they are? Well, in an article about caring for students facing trauma, author Kristen Sowers suggested 6 key ways to reach students. And I want to just talk about those. First, she said that we need to identify what need a behavior is expressing. And so as we think about Curtis and what he was doing, all of us express our needs in ways that were taught or modeled for us. So what we need to do is remember to focus on what a student is really asking for instead of how he or she is asking. Another way of thinking about this is, instead of focusing on what they're doing, focus on why they're doing it. I'd also like to ask you to think about your role as a teacher when a child is acting out, because sometimes behavior is feedback. And just like I learned with Curtis, sometimes we're not creating a space to invite them into the learning. The second key she talked about was to see the worth in each student and build from his or her strengths. In other words, instead of asking, what's wrong with this student, try to remember to ask yourself, what's right about her? What's her potential, and how can I tap into that? Third, remember that kids can't learn if they don't feel safe. It's the basic and fundamental understanding of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They can't learn if they don't feel safe. So what are we doing to create warm and welcoming and safe environments in our classrooms? Do we have rituals to welcome students into our class? Do we think about things like hugs and high fives and handshakes? Do we pay attention to and are we concerned about bullying behaviors? And do we put an end to those and not tolerate those as soon as we see them? In other words, are we connected to our students and thinking about their physical and their emotional safety? Fourth, she suggests considering whether a basic need isn't being met. Again, Maslow's Hierarchy 101, when you're struggling to connect with a student, consider whether or not their basic needs are being met, or if there might be something else going on in their lives that could be a barrier to their readiness for learning. You'll learn more in Virginia Beach about trauma-informed care. You'll learn more about students with adverse childhood experiences, but always stop when a child is frustrating you and think about what else is going on in this child's life and what help and support can I or other adults in this building or school division provide for this student and this family. She also suggests that we work from a team perspective. Education can be a lonely and an isolating experience if we let it. So one of the ways that we can successfully reach all of our students is to rely on one another. If you're struggling with a child, ask your colleague about their best thinking, especially if you share those students, but even if you don't. And then finally, the author suggests giving students grace. You know, I often get asked about what advice would I give to new principals, having been a principal and now school administrator for 20 years. And what I always say is, you don't always have to be right. You don't always have to be right. In fact, sometimes the need to be right is less important and less effective than forgiveness or a second chance. even if it's not warranted. Now, I'm not talking about letting a student curse at you or throw chairs in your classroom or threaten others. We're here to support you in those situations, but how do we respond when a child doesn't show up with a pencil? When you approach children from this perspective, I can tell you that you're doing two things. One, you're getting the necessary insight that you need to best instructionally lead that child. But secondly, and most importantly, you are forging the relationships that stay with students for years and for decades to come. Your lessons and your extra efforts and your notes of encouragement, they stay with children. They're the reason that so many of you who have already been teaching and so many of our teachers can tell stories about children whose weddings they've attended, who still get notices about their children's births, who stay connected with students long after they're no longer teaching them. Now listen, in every school district, you're going to have children in your classroom who are dealing with the traumatic effects of poverty. And let me say this, I deeply believe that our work, that public education is the only work that can truly break the cycle of poverty. But no matter what school you're in, no matter who your students are, no matter how much money their parents have, you will have students who are coming to us with struggles of abuse, of divorce, neglect, broken families, addiction, an incredible gamut of challenges and obstacles. And if we want these students, no matter who they are, where they come from, zip code, color of their skin, money in their parents' pockets, if we want them to learn anything from us, then we have to meet them where they are. We have to make sure that they're cared for, that they're loved, and that they know from us that they're going to do great things in this world. Because sometimes we're the only voice telling them this. And by the way, we have to remember that every child deserves this. So this isn't a conversation only about the kids who come to us with challenges. Those with supportive parents and terrific home lives also come to us with hopes and aspirations and anxieties, and they need us too. And especially and more so ever today, given what has happened over the last 6 months. So you're not just teachers in your buildings, you are truly missionaries. You have been called to a great profession. And that profession will yield impacts so far-reaching that you may never even see them. There is no measuring the impact you can have as a teacher, as an instructional leader here in the city of Virginia Beach. And if this is your first year, it is important for you to remember this impact as you are experiencing some of the ups and downs that you are likely to experience, just as anybody new to a career will experience. And even if you are a veteran and you're joining our school division for the first time, each of you and all of you need to be able to articulate and to hold on to the reasons why you're here as we head into this challenging yet exciting new school year. So let me just tell you a little bit about my why. So these are my two boys. That's Ian on the left, and that's my little guy, Aaron, on the right. And Ian, he's going into the 6th grade, and Aaron is a 3rd grader, and they're both at the Old Donation School this year. Now, to be fair, these are not my only kids. These are just way cuter than the other ones, but here's the whole group. So I have 6 children, and I'm proud of every single one of those 6 children. 2 of them are in college, and 4 of them attend our schools here in Virginia Beach. And so in many ways, I'm just like every other parent in our city. All of these challenges that we've been facing, all of the questions, all of the answers we've had to make, the decisions we've had to come to about how we enter this school year, this has been my why in thinking about that. How do I keep them engaged? How do I keep them safe? And at the core of that decision making is this. As with every other parent in the city, there are 3 things that I want to happen for my kids each and every day, whether they're stepping off that school bus and heading into class, or whether that's sitting down in the family kitchen with their Chromebook to join a virtual classroom. There are 3 things that need to happen for my kids each and every day. And it's the same 3 things that I want for every child in the school division, that all of our parents want, and that we have to expect of ourselves. So if you leave here today with nothing else, leave here with my 3 expectations for all of our students. First, know that I want them to be cared for. I talked earlier about safety, and this is what I'm talking about. I want to make sure that our students have what they need to be successful, that they're emotionally safe, that their mental health needs are attended to, that they're physically safe, that they have food, that they have shelter and housing, that they feel physically safe in our schools, that they're not confronted by bullies or feel like they can't be in school because they're concerned for their own safety. I want them to be cared for and to have their needs met. I want them to learn something. The second thing I need for our students is to learn something every day. And I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation as an educator. You know, when my own children come home, and like many of you who are parents, one of the first things you do when they come home from school is, hey, what did you learn today? Tell me about school today. And if you're like me, many of your children will say, nothing. And, you know, there are times when my children come home from school and I say, what did you learn today? And they're so excited about something that happened in class that they can't wait to tell me about it. That they want to describe the activity, they want to describe the learning, how they collaborated with their peers, they invented a new idea, they came up with something exciting and interesting all on their own. And I want that experience to be the experience that our kids have every day. So I know they're going to learn something every day, but I want them to be so excited about that learning that they can't wait to tell you about it as their teacher. They can't wait to get home and tell their parents about it. And the third thing that I want for our students every single day, same thing that I want for my children, is I want them to feel loved. I want them to feel loved. And I know that that's a little bit unusual, that not in every school division do we talk about loving our students. But I want our students to know that the adults in our buildings love them, that we get up in the morning thinking about their success, that we aspire for them greatness, that we believe in them, that we love them with all of our heart, and we're willing to commit of ourselves to them to make sure that they leave here reaching their full potential. Now, I want you to put that in your heart. I want you to put those 3 things in your heart today. I want you to take that with you. We don't need to be afraid to show our kids that we love them. And so let's put that on full display this school year together. Before we wrap up, let me acknowledge again that as your superintendent, I so appreciate the work that our teachers do. I want you to know that I value the changes that you can make in a child's life and the enthusiasm with which you approach every single school day. And I want to talk just for a second about that enthusiasm. Because, you know, I know it can be hard. I know it can be hard to be a teacher. It's hard to be an educator, more so today than ever before. And you heard Mrs. Walker talking about the challenges, and those challenges exist at the federal level, at the state level, regionally, here locally. It can be hard. But I remember this lesson. When I was a high school principal, I had a colleague say to me, you know, Aaron, when the principal sneezes, the whole school catches a cold. And what did he mean by that? Well, here's what he meant. When I was a principal, parents would call and they'd want to meet with me. And usually when they wanted to meet with me, it was not because they were happy with us. And so very often, because I wanted to spend my day in our school, in our classrooms, I would meet with them before the school day started. And so I'd meet with them and they would be spending time and they would be very upset with me and we'd be trying to solve their problem. And sometimes I walk out of there just feeling beat up. And I'd walk out and the bell was getting ready to ring and students are coming into the building and my teachers are standing in the hallway because we expected each other to be out in the hallway greeting our kids and shaking their hands, high-fiving them and making them feel welcome. And I remember walking down the hall and Mr. Draper, my earth science teacher, his first teacher I would come to, and Mr. Draper would say, hey, Dr. Spence, how are you doing this morning? And I had in that moment 2 choices. And the first choice was to tell him how I was really doing, to say, you know what, I just got beat up by this parent. I can't believe that entitled parent. And what do they think they're doing coming in here and yelling at me because their kid got detention? Their kid deserved detention. Don't they know that? And if I had done that, what do you think Mr. Draper would have done? He'd have turned around, he'd have walked into his classrooms, and his kids would have come in, and if they were a little fidgety, he'd just say, quiet down. And then if they'd spoken a little bit too much while he was talking, they just said, that's enough. Everybody turn your book to page 30 and just read silently. And that's how the day would have gone for us. Or my second choice, Mr. Draper, I'm doing great. I am so excited. First of all, I'm glad to see you. I'm glad to see you every day. I love your smiling face out here shaking hands with kids. I can't wait to see you in third block. I know you're doing an earthquake lesson, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to do it with you and with your kids because I think it's going to be really cool. And he's going to go in and he's going to have a pep in his step, and he's going to be excited to teach for the day. And we have the same power and the same opportunity with our students. The same power and the same opportunity to be enthusiastic no matter what else is happening. I remember as a young French teacher, I was having a bad day once, and I went in and I wrote on the board, pas aujourd'hui. Pas aujourd'hui. And if you speak French, you know what that means? It means not today. And I was a fun teacher. And I mean, we had a good time in class. And I insisted on having a good time in class. But I wrote not today because I was having a bad day. And my kids got the message, and they sat up in their chairs and they were quiet. And they knew not to mess with me that day. And frankly, it was a good day because they weren't messing with me. But at the end of that day, all I could think to myself was, what did you just do? You made this whole day about you. And your job is to make this whole day about them. And so let's put that enthusiasm and that love on display. Let's do that every single day for our kids. Let's give them our very best. And as I mentioned at the beginning of all of this, what a year it is to be an educator. What a challenging and interesting year. And while this may be your first year as a teacher or your first year in Virginia Beach City Public School, it's really the first year for all of us here in Virginia Beach because we're building something new. Because what we thought of as normal in education is not coming back soon if it ever does. So we're building 2 new school divisions from the ground up. One that's virtual, one that's a blend of virtual and face-to-face. And you're joining your veteran colleagues as the architect of this new environment. And together we'll learn what not to do and we'll learn what to do. But what matters every day is that we come and we bring our best and we come excited to make a difference in the lives of our kids, and we keep them all at the center of our work and at the center of our heart. And I want to leave you finally with this artwork, which was created by one of our middle schoolers a couple years ago, and it won a statewide competition. Now, if you look closely at this, you can see all of those teachers holding up the foundation of our society. First, holding up our doctors, our first responders, our scientists, artists, so many others who make our society possible. And so the message here is this: you, our teachers, you make society possible. Thank you for choosing this career. Thank you in 2020 for choosing to be an educator, despite all of the challenges, for choosing to make a difference in the lives of young people. And thank you, especially from the bottom of my heart, thank you for choosing to do that in Virginia Beach City Public Schools. I love you all for what you do. I love you all for the difference you're going to make for our children and our community. Let's go out there and let's have a great year. Thank you so much. And once again, welcome to our team.
Thank you so much, Dr. Spence. I never get tired of listening to you tell your inspiring stories and get us ready for our school year each year at orientation. Thank you all, the rest of you, for attending. We hope you have a wonderful day and an inspiring week. And if you need any assistance at all, please email us at pgi@vbschools.com. Thank you.